Well, we're at that time of year again where everybody does everything from New Year's resolutions to serious thought about what you want to do in your professional life or your business. So today we're going to be talking about two areas that are going to help you get more focused and more determined about accomplishing the things you want. Stay with us. Hey, this is Steve Smith, and I'm joined by Travis Smith. We're your two Business Wingmen hosts. And today the topic's going to be how do you get a really good start into this new year, 2025? And look, you can find countless podcasts and articles out there that are going to talk about all manner of things with how you set goals and how you get yourself focused and what do you want out of life and all this kind of stuff. And we're not going to go there. We're not going to get that deep and hardcore into the conversation. We're going to kind of keep it light, but give you some really relevant things that you can do to maybe tune up your approach to figuring out what you really want and then having a half a chance of actually getting it. So Travis, what is your typical approach when the new year comes? I don't know about you, but I gave up I gave up New Year's resolutions about 10 years ago because, I never stick with them. So I try to do something that's gives me a little more feeling of permanence, but I'm curious about you. What do you do when the new year starts?
That's so funny how you just rolled with resolutions because just yesterday I happened to look up online what the percent of people who continue with their New Year's resolutions and then kind of how that slops off. I
Right.
was
It's dismal,
absolutely
isn't it?
it's it's completely dismal
Right.
and rather pathetic. So it's 80% of our New Year's resolutions fall off by February. That's awful. And
Yeah.
all that really tells me is either A, just don't do them, just don't even bother. Be your same self, right? Roll into the new year.
Don't
Uh,
change. Right.
right. Or if you're going to actually set out to do it, write it down, make it measurable, and talk about it with other people so there's some accountability, right? And I think the problem that I've run into in the past when I have thought about this idea of resolutions or goals or I just, the problem I run into is I make too many of them. And then it falls into this bucket of, well, if everything's important, nothing's important,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, to me, resolutions are just a way to entertain yourself at New Year's when you've probably got too much booze in you. And because, half the people don't remember them, and the other ones you said kind of lose interest by the time February rolls around. But I mean, for people, professional people, people that either work in businesses or own their own business, and the things that they have to accomplish in order to move themselves ahead in life are a little more serious in nature. What do you think is a best way of approaching that so you don't get too scientific and technical about it, but it's something that you can keep your arms around long enough to actually see an accomplishment?
So I think first, if you are toying with the idea about making a change or an adjustment with the start of the year and you're using the new year as kind of your catalyst, your reason for it, right? The first thing is if it's not measurable, meaning it's nebulous, right? So, for example, if I start out the new year and my resolution or my goal is just, I want to be more positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That nobody's saying that that's bad. That's actually a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge, though, with that type of a goal or a resolution, right? And perhaps for the rest of this discussion, we'll just refer to that as goals. There's really no way to measure that and manage, are you doing better? It's kind of
Right.
nebulous, right? It's an emotional thing, it's a
Right.
feeling. So if you really want whatever you're doing moving forward to have a chance at succeeding, it has to be simple, it has to be measurable, right? And there also has to be some legitimate reason behind why you're doing it. If it's just kind of this like, hey, it'd be great to go to Disneyland once a week, right? It's like, well, there's really no big impact there as to what's driving that behavior change.
Well, yeah, I mean, it has to be purposeful to you. It has to
Correct.
mean something to you. It can't just be things that other people are telling you, you've got to be this or that, because in your own head, if it doesn't resonate as, I really need to do this, then you're not going to do it. So I agree. It needs to be distinct in terms of you looking and really drilling it down to what daily thing affects the kind of behavior change like you just talked about. I need to be more positive. So, what do you need to do every single day from a habit standpoint that's going to change how you show up and how you automatically do stuff? And it could be every morning you wake up and you look in the mirror and you just smile at yourself for 30 seconds. I mean, most of us don't realize when we go out in the public, the face we're wearing, which we don't see, but it's a direct reflection of what's going on in our head,
Sure.
might not really display who we are to everybody else. People looking at us, oh, here he is, the old grump. But, it's
Well,
only because they see that on your face.
there's actually a phrase for that, right?
What?
It's so
I did not
good.
know this.
So the acronym is RBF. It stands for resting bitch face. But what it references is inside you may not feel that way, but on the outside you're projecting one that's unapproachable, irritable, angry, right? Whatever you want to refer to that,
Right.
right? Yeah, and
Yes.
that's the RBF.
So we've talked about on past podcasts what you can actually do to kind of uplift your own energy, your own spirit on a daily basis. And so one of the things, I'll just repeat it, is every single day find someone to give a compliment to before noon. Whether it's the place you go to get coffee, if you go to breakfast with somebody, maybe it's your spouse in the morning who's up before you are and has the coffee already made.
Right.
Find somebody to thank or to show some appreciation to, and that over time will cause you yourself to have a little more of a positive outlook. So those are the kind of things we're talking about. You can decide whatever goal you want to have as long as you can attach some type of activity to it so that at some point it shows up and it becomes meaningful.
And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Going back to my example earlier of positivity, maybe I want to get rid of that resting bitch face, right? I have some friends and family that have given me some good feedback that I'm not approachable or I put off a bad vibe, right?
Right.
Uh, there's nothing wrong with trying to improve that. The challenge becomes how do you make that measurable? I'm sure there's a way to do that. It's just at this point in the discussion, I can't really think of a way to make that measurable other than maybe just continuing to get feedback on how you're showing up, right?
Well, no, I think that the greatest measuring point to that is you continue to practice that activity. And I guarantee you, if you do it every single day, within about the first 2 weeks, someone is going to respond to what you say or what you do in a way that tells you that what you complimented them on or what you thanked them for was received in a really genuine way. That maybe they have never heard somebody say that to them before, and they're going to respond that way. And when they do, you had an impact.
So what you're saying is nobody's hit them between the eyes with you have resting bitch face.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because look, I
Well,
mean, look, unfortunately, in society today, many of us have gotten kind of bludgeoned into this idea that when you see some people acting badly, you don't want to be judgmental, you don't want to be showing any superiority. You basically just don't say anything. You remove yourself from the situation. Well, that individual could be walking around literally for years and and this happens on the job. You have managers that will tell people if you have, if you want my help, just come see me. I leave my doors open all the time. I'm very accessible. But what they never look at is, am I approachable? Do I walk around with resting bitch face on all the time and nobody wants to come up to me with a real problem because they're afraid of the blowback? So that's the problem. You can be accessible, but if nobody thinks you're approachable, you're still going to be sitting in the office all day by yourself.
so if we leave the RBF piece aside here and perhaps the positivity dream, right? I'm curious from your end, what do you think most professionals, right? Whether you're in management or not,
Mhm.
what do you think, if you had to guess, is the number one thing a business professional walks into the new year hoping or wanting to change or, use the goal, right? Resolution. What do you think the number one thing is?
Um, all right. Here's what I would like to think, but I have no data to back it up. I think most professionals, and it might not be at the beginning of the year, but there's probably some point in their career life where they just want to be viewed as being more respectable, being more valued, being someone who other people look up to and treat seriously because everything they've learned and know how to do is now showing up in their surroundings. So that would be my guess.
Well, I have a fun little game here.
All
Would
right.
you like to know what Chat GPT said?
Sure, throw it out there.
Because the response actually is something that I was not expecting, even though it is a good thing.
Okay.
But if you throw into Chat GPT, what's the number one thing a business professional wants to change starting in the new year?
Okay.
The answer is to improve their professional networking.
Interesting. Okay.
So I find that interesting also because networking is one of the things I actually see people really struggle with. So I guess from that end, it kind of makes sense that that would be a goal for people
Hmm.
because I can't tell you the number of folks who, unfortunately, they find themselves in a situation maybe where they're unemployed. Their company got sold, they're transitioning between jobs for whatever the reason may be.
Hmm.
And then they start networking. And you and I have
Right.
talked about this until we're blue in the face. So I don't
Right.
necessarily think we need to spend a ton of time on
Sometimes
it, but
you have to do it then, but that's not the time to start.
correct. That is the worst time to start networking.
Right.
So even though I wasn't expecting that answer from good old ChatGPT, I actually am happy to hang my hat on that kind of a mindset moving into the new year that
Right.
especially if you are employed, I want to make sure that I'm really articulating that well. If you are gainfully employed today,
Yeah.
that's a great thing to start the year off on. Get more involved. Start dialing up those, those former, whatever it is, bosses, colleagues, peers. Get back connected with people. Attend industry events.
Hmm.
You know, get back engaged in the industry that you're involved in. I think what you'll find is just by maybe relighting the fire for some of those relationships, having a little bit more understanding of what's going on in your industry, that will just naturally start to elevate your game as you go through the year.
Right. And look, whether it's more networking or just being more impactful as a leader, maybe trying to figure out how to get yourself promoted, how to kind of get out of the job you've been in for 4 years and you think you're more valuable and you got to figure out how to move up the chain.
Right.
Regardless of any of those kinds of things, to me, if you're really serious about making the kind of change that's going to move that needle, you've got to be able to answer three questions. And the first one is, what do I need to do better? So if you look at it, the networking example that you threw out, or maybe the promotability situation,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to put yourself in that situation and say, what do I need to do better? Do I need to be more confident in who I am when I show up? Do I need to be able to learn how to converse better in situations where you don't have forever to tell your story, but you need to be able to make really good, effective relationships by knowing how to speak and doing that kind of thing in an open, fluid crowd.
Oh, you know what, Colin? I'm sorry. I hope you have your train of thought here saved for a moment. Can we talk about that real quick? Oh my God. For the folks listening, happy 2025, by the way. If there's anything that you're going to do to improve yourself this year, outside of networking, it should be what the grand Yoda just mentioned, which is brevity. Get to the freaking
Right,
point.
right,
Learn how to be concise. Learn how to drive a message. Learn how. I cannot begin to tell you how awful that is when someone's talking and they're just doing this giant loop, this like intergalactic, like I am right now, by the way, this intergalactic loop of a story, none of which makes freaking sense, confuses people to high hell. That is such a bad trait that so many people have.
Well, that's because in many networking situations or group gatherings or business functions, whatever the purpose is for people getting together, many times people confuse the dynamics and the purpose of networking with therapy. And that's the problem. If you go into that and you immediately just unload what's in your head, you've killed yourself, and people are just dying to figure out how to introduce you to somebody else so they can get away. So the first thing in my three questions is figure out what you need to do better. And don't come up with this laundry list. One, maybe two primary things that can really just touch a lot of different stuff that you're dealing with. Question number two, what should you do more of? We all have things that we do that are successful, that work well. Many times, though, we don't do enough of it. We do it either when we need a boost in our energy or our mental, wherever that happens to be. But we don't do enough of it to really get a maximum return from it. So again, networking is a good example. You might go out every once in a while because the association that your company joins because it's part of an industry group has two dinner functions a year. So you go to those two dinner functions and that's it. And you might have a great time and you might have great conversations and people are asking you for your business card and all this kind of good stuff twice a year. Do more of that kind of stuff if you find yourself doing it well.
I love that. Simple, effective, right? And for somebody like me, that would be really helpful because, as I had shared at the beginning of this discussion, I have a bad habit of trying to do too much at once. And then what ends up happening? Nothing really ends up getting done, right? And so I've had to really make a mindful behavior change about when I'm looking at goals, 1 to 2,
Right,
right? Because the rest of all these goals that I usually would slap in there, they're really more leading indicators, right? More activities leading up to the main thing.
right.
I love
Well,
that feedback.
okay, so what you just walked into with that kind of sets up my third question. What are you going to stop doing?
Ooh,
We all, again, because of our busy lives and our level of responsibility and the things that are just swirling around as you're trying to move your business forward, you get caught into a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing, but because you've confused urgency with importance, and so you just put them on your list. And then so all of a sudden you're down in the weeds doing all this stuff every day, and the important stuff is just flying right by your head.
right.
And so I maintain that a lot of times the reason people's goals never get accomplished isn't because they're not worthy goals, isn't because the person isn't doesn't have the ability to get them done. It's because they're so mired in unproductive crap that they've gotten used to doing that they never get around to it. I didn't have time. That's the number one thing I hear from clients who push back. I don't have time. Well, yes, you do. You're just spending all your time on crap that's not getting you what you want.
See, but I think that goes back to the reason people don't have time and then therefore it doesn't get prioritized is because the new goal itself is not a big enough need. It's not
Hmm.
life or death. It's not,
Right.
it's some kind of like, hey, it's kind of over here off my peripheral. Yeah, it'd be great if that happens, but the reality is if it doesn't, I'm going to move on. Same
Right.
old, same old. It's kind of
Right.
like this idea of networking, right? Could you realistically go through the rest of this year not changing that behavior and still have your job?
Yeah,
I,
sure.
I
Possible.
think that's probably there's a very good case for that, right?
Right.
However, if we could get our asses in gear and prioritize that, it's really more of the intangible stuff that comes from networking that can be really helpful in our careers. The funny thing is, it's just a lot of us, if it's not moving the needle and it's not moving the needle quick, we're not going to do it.
Right. Right. Networking, which in some situations, like for a lot of entrepreneurs, is a form of marketing. And marketing is a slow build activity. Unless you've got gobs and gobs of money to put all these things in place very quickly and see the needle jump very fast, for most people, it's a slow, steady build. And building relationships outside your company, maybe even inside your company, can also be a very slow build. You've just got to stick with it and do it. But I do think it gets back to being able to really clearly answer those three questions. What do I need to do better? What do I need to do more of? And what do I need to stop doing?
So I want to go back to that piece. What do I want to stop doing or need to stop doing? Have you given that some thought? So in 2025, is there anything that registers with you? You're like, you know what? I could probably stop doing that. It's okay. You're in the trust tree, so you can just divulge.
Um, I like to I like to sit and ponder topics and articles and write things and stuff like that. And I think some of that stuff is purposeful, but I could probably stop doing a lot of that because what happens is the next great idea comes along and I might finish an article, but I don't publish it. So I'm always in the idea generation phase, and I'm never in the actual execution phase with that. So really just honing in on a few really good topics and just not worrying about anything else would be a better use of my time. I can also tell you that actually last year I started this, wasn't really thinking of it topically, but this year I'm really going to be focused on it. I'm going to be very selective about where I spend my time outside the business, you know,
Ooh.
because I was, I'm working with our city's chamber, love that. I was doing this other nonprofit thing. I was really, enjoying that. But once you sit down and look at your calendar and you see how many non-business activities you're involved in, like that's where, I've already made the decision that one of those two is gonna go off my list. And it's because I really want to spend more time figuring out how to reach clients and do other types of material development like training courses and things like that, which are revenue drivers. So I'm definitely going to be backing away from what I consider to be the volunteer charitable time work that I've been doing because I've done it, I've loved it, but it's everything, nothing lasts forever. So some of this stuff needs to come to an end.
That's interesting you say that. We've done perhaps two episodes on that actual discussion prior, which is saying no, right?
Hmm.
So that's a really good transition or a behavior change to start the year is just saying no more, freeing up time for things that I don't want to say really matter, but
Hmm.
really push the needle, whether that's professionally or personally, right?
Right.
Because to your point, you just can't do everything. And at least I have found with myself that the more I spread myself thin, the less effective I become with each one of those individual items,
Well,
whatever they
not
may
only
be.
that, but in many cases, when you're at your lowest point energy wise, it's when you're back in your business. And that's not when you want to be out of fuel.
I love it.
All right, folks. Listen, we started this year with this episode for this primary purpose. Keep it light, but just offer you some things that you can really sit down and think about that could be major course correctors for you in 2025. So we hope you got some great tips. If you're working with people that have the same problems that we've been talking about here for the last 30 minutes, tune them into this episode and so they can get some ideas about maybe how to course correct and just be more fulfilled in what they spend their time, their focus, and their energy doing in 2025. So thanks for being with us. As always, our new episodes come out every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we look forward to bringing you some more great content next week. Travis, is a great topic. Thanks for bringing it up. Take care.